Welcome to the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. I am Club President Darren Miller, President of JM Construction. Please stand if you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now Karen Hung, founder and CEO of Silver Rock Consulting, will give our invocation.
Thank you, President Darren. Hello, everybody. I was thinking about our speaker, President Johnson, today and what he's about to share with us. And I thought about seasons because we have an exciting time to be able to look forward into the next season and what he has to share. Today's invocation is about seasons and time. I'm going to read an excerpt from Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8. Some of you all may remember a song, kind of around this. But there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Let us pray. Lord, as we move from a season where many refrain from embracing, we pray that this next season is a time to heal, to build, to laugh, to dance, to embrace, to gather, and to have peace. Amen.
Thank you, Karen. I'd also like to say thank you to our rotating sponsors whose logos ran on the PowerPoint before lunch. Certainly appreciate all of your support for the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. I'd also like to say a fond welcome to our virtual audience. It means a lot to have you here with us today. We also have some guests that are with us here in the room, so please stand when I call your name so I can welcome you. Gina Stilp is the Executive Director at the Zilber Family Foundation. Irma Yepes-Klassen is a Program Officer at the Zilber Family Foundation. Nicole Koss, Chief Operating Officer at Strategic Leaders Academy. Laura Rose Miller is the Assistant Vice President of Marketing, Campaign Manager at Associated Bank. Eva Nidakovic is the student at Bernard College pursuing a double major in political science and Russian language. Alyssa Mchenry is the Executive Assistant to Common Council President, Chevalier Johnson, City of Milwaukee. Welcome to our club. A little bit of club business. Delighted to have a new Rotary member to introduce today. Lloyd and Chris, please come up to the stage. Lloyd Dickinson is the retired partner at Foley & Lardner, and he will be introducing our newest member.
Thank you, President Darren. It is really an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce you to Chris Kolanda. You may remember Chris from the fine presentation he gave to us for Armed Forces Week earlier this year. Chris is a retired Army colonel who had the distinction and ability to be the first American to both command military combat operations against the Taliban in Afghanistan and subsequently to negotiate with them to forward the peace process. He was the trusted advisor to 3 secretaries of defense and 3 four-star generals. Chris is a West Point graduate. He has advanced degrees from both the Naval and Army War Colleges, and, believe it or not, a PhD from King's College, London. He was featured in Jake Tapper's book, The Outpost, and also in the book Stones into Schools by Greg Mortensen. He's been featured on CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and NPR, as well as articles in the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. Chris himself has written 3 books. The first is Leadership, the Warrior's Art. Second, The Counterinsurgency Challenge. And the soon-to-be-released Zero-Sum Victory, What We're Getting Wrong About War. Chris is the founder and CEO of the Strategic Leaders Academy, which seeks to help leaders grow their businesses the right way, at the right pace, and with the right team. I think we're very fortunate that Chris and his wife Nicole, who is herself a former intelligence community leader and has deployed overseas numerous times, now live right here in Milwaukee in the historic Water Tower neighborhood on the east side. They enjoy daily walks along Lake Michigan, led by Daisy, their German Shepherd. So, Chris?
Thank you, Lloyd. That was really kind. Nicole and I have absolutely fallen in love with Milwaukee, and we're looking for the right organization to join where we could really contribute to our community, and we found it. Thank you.
I took Darren's agenda.
It's going to make me do it by memory.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Chris, welcome to our club. We have a few other announcements. One thing I'd like to highlight, and you'll find information on your tables, is that many of you may know that there is a humanitarian crisis unfolding in Ethiopia, and Milwaukee Rotarians have rallied to help support Donite Ryle, an Ethiopian student of nursing at Alverno College. Northern Ethiopia is currently experiencing one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. This conflict has turned Donite's family world upside down, throwing her academic future into uncertainty. Donite's father is a Rotarian in Addis Ababa. He's a physician, and he has since lost his job and their family home. One of the senior leaders at Rotary headquarters in Evanston reached out to our club to see what we could do to help. Our member, Mary Bolich, wrote a short profile, which is on your table, about Donite and her family. You will also receive an email about her current situation, and you will find that coming after the program today. Generous club members have already donated funds to cover more than half of her tuition. If you'd like to help, please contact Mary in the Rotary office for more information as we continue to support Donite. This is the last call for the behind-the-scenes tour of the Milwaukee Public Museum this Thursday morning, June 24th. This will be an opportunity to visit areas and view exhibits and artifacts that are not typically available to the public. Rotarians who want to stay and visit the Mandela exhibit will also be offered a discounted ticket. For more information and the link to register, check your email from the club. It's not too late to sign up, but please RSVP on the website today or stop by the registration table on your way out. A special thank you to Jerry Stepaniak for pulling that together. And now I'd like to welcome Kent Laverne, Chief Deputy District Attorney at the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, President Darren. Good afternoon to all of you. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you Cavalier Chevy Johnson. He is the president of the City of Milwaukee Common Council. He was elected to this position just last year by his peers on the Common Council. He was first elected to the Common Council in 2016, and he represents the 2nd District, which is comprised of neighborhoods in the north central part of the City of Milwaukee. Cavalier grew up in Milwaukee and is a graduate of Bayview High School and UW-Madison. Upon graduating from college, Cavalier returned to his hometown to work as what is now called Employed Milwaukee, where he served at-risk youth entering the workforce for the first time, and adults retooling to re-enter the workforce. Prior to his election to the Common Council, Cavalier served in the Barrett administration as a community outreach liaison, working closely with community and faith leaders on some of the city's greatest challenges. Cavalier's work as an alderman has focused on public safety reform, investment in infrastructure, equity and inclusion, early childhood education, and economic development. He has served on the boards of the Milwaukee YMCA, the ACLU, and Community Brainstorming. And he lives here in Milwaukee, of course, with his wife, Dominique, son, Oliver, and their twin daughters, Madison and Bella. Please join me in welcoming Milwaukee Common Council President, Cavalier Chevy Johnson.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. As said, my name is Cavalier Johnson, right there on the screen. I'm president of Milwaukee Common Council and also the 2nd District Alderman here in our city. I'm very pleased to be here. This is only my second time coming before Rotary, once as an attendee and now my second time as the featured speaker. So if you would please bear with me. It's just very overwhelming and very exciting. And I know this is a group of well-intentioned, community-minded civic people, and I really appreciate having the opportunity to address you. As I look around the room and some of the people that I've talked to, I mean, it's really a who's who, right, of Milwaukee and our region. We've got top prosecutors here in Milwaukee County, folks I've known for 20 years, even people who keep me up at night with lawsuits, like Frank Gimble in the back there. Hey, Frank. So again, my name is Cavalier Johnson. Chevy is my nickname, as Kent said. And Kent gave you a little bit of my background, but I wanted to just touch a little bit more on it. So as he said, I was born right here in Milwaukee, raised right here in Milwaukee, still live right here in Milwaukee. But what he didn't say, what's not on the official website, on the city website, is that I lived in some of the most depressed neighborhoods in Milwaukee. I moved around more times than I can even count. I went to more Milwaukee public schools than I can even keep track of sometimes. It wasn't until I got to middle school where I was able to stay in one school from start until finish. I grew up in a family that was split. My parents separated when I was 3 years old. I lived mostly with my mom and my dad. And my stepmom, I got the chance to visit with on the weekends. And so I had a set of siblings at home with my mom and a set of siblings with my dad and my stepmom as well. All told, I've got 9 siblings. And some of my siblings did pretty well. My oldest brother, on my father's side, is a warden in the Wisconsin Department of Corrections. And I've got some other siblings who did not do too well and have been in and out of prison or jail basically since they had the opportunity to go at a young age. So I've seen it all. I've seen a lot of the pain, a lot of the violence, but also a lot of the love and opportunity that's present in Milwaukee. And those are the things that propelled me to where I am now. I had the opportunity to, at a young age, 14 years old, 20 years ago, to get involved with a pre-college program called Sponsor a Scholar with the YMCA. It was with the YMCA then. And that program was just so profound to me. It presented an opportunity for young people like myself from low-income communities and families in Milwaukee Public Schools to go off to college, which I did at UW-Madison, as was mentioned. The other part of that program was to get those same young people involved in service and giving back. And so I paired that, my desire to give back and serve the community, with what I saw nearly 20 years ago as a freshman at Bayview High School on September 11th, which was the World Trade Center being knocked down. And I had a light bulb that went off in my head at that time, because I saw President Bush. Go to what was left of the World Trade Center, and he was working to bring people together. And the light bulb went off in my head and said, I could go into government service, and I fell in love with serving people at the YMCA. And I could use government as the vehicle to serve people every single day. And I just never looked back from that. So that's why I went on to UW-Madison, studied political science, went around the country to New York to work for a nonprofit, went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina to help folks down there, went to London to help at-risk young people, and as Ken said, worked with Employ Milwaukee to work with young people trying to find their first summer jobs here in Milwaukee, seniors trying to retool to get back to the workforce, young people involved in the juvenile justice system, and so much more, and continue to go on and continue to find other ways to serve. And so I ran for office after college, and I lost really, really bad. It was not even close. It was terrible. I was in last place in my first run for county board supervisor. The next year, I had the opportunity to run again, and somehow, some way, you guys will get a kick out of this, somehow, some way, the second time that I ran, I found a way to lose even worse than I did the first time. But I didn't let that deter me. I kept on going. I kept on serving the community, got further involved, went to community brainstorming, got involved there on their board. The mayor's administration saw some of the work that I was doing out in the community and decided to bring me on. And it's an opportunity that I was very pleased to have. I think 26 years old and a young African-American working in the mayor's office, and had come up from, like I said, some of the most challenging neighborhoods, worked my way through college, and now was in the mayor's office. I left all that because I still had a dream to run for office myself, and I did in 2016. That time I didn't end up in last place in the primary election with 5 folks. I ended up in first place with nearly 40% of the vote. Of course, won the general election in 2016, served a term on the Common Council, and then in 2020 here as, certainly the youngest African American, but one of the youngest people ever to become Common Council President here in the city of Milwaukee. And here we are today. So that's a little bit of background on me. Make sure I got this right. I don't use these very often, so help me out. So when I came into office as a Common Council President last year, I joined these two, my friends, my colleagues. You guys recognize them as well. Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, who, fun fact, I went to high school with. I was a better student than he was, he'd probably say. And then Marcelia Nicholson, who is my counterpart over on the Milwaukee County Board. She's the county board chairwoman. And so when we all came into office last year, we assumed 3 of the 4 principal leadership positions in local government. So young, Black, millennial, with a commitment to Milwaukee. And we control, as I said, 3 of the 4 principal government leaderships in the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County. 1 of the executive positions, county executive, of course, the other being held currently by Mayor Tom Barrett, and then, of course, my counterpart, Supervisor Chairwoman Marcelia Nicholson, as County Board Chairwoman. And on my side of things is this, the City of Milwaukee Common Council. 15 members, each representing a district of about 40,000 people. So for folks' edification, that's sort of similar. I know that former Mayor Kathy Eli is here from Wauwatosa. Hey, Mayor. The populations of our districts are basically like having 15 Wauwatosas that are all connected together. And each of us has a responsibility as a district administrator to deliver city services to all of these constituents, right? And my leadership team on the Common Council are the first district alderman, Ashanti Hamilton, former Common Council president, a lawyer, and he leads our Judiciary and Legislation Committee. So he probably is being kept up at night even more so than I am, thanks to Frank. Second shout out for you, Frank. Next, along the line there at the top, 4th District Alderman, also an attorney, an advocate for public infrastructure, an advocate for building design and architecture. Alderman Robert Bauman is the leader of our Public Works Committee. Next, in the second row there, Alderwoman Malele Coggs, also an attorney. She leads our Quasi-Judicial Licenses Committee, probably one of the most forward-facing committees that we have on the City of Milwaukee Common Council. She's also got the longest experience serving on that committee as well. Right next to her, Alderman Khalif Rainey. He serves as chairman of our Community and Economic Development Committee. Before he became an alderman in 2016, he came in with me. Alderman Rainey served as a member of the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors. And before that, he served about 10 years working in the community on behalf of Congresswoman Gwen Moore. And so he leads our Community and Economic Development Committee. Next up at the end there is Alderman Michael Murphy, who came to the Common Council in 1989, by far our longest standing member. He's got the most experience, of course, of any alder member, alderperson. Alderman Murphy also has the longest time behind the chairman's seat of the Finance and Personnel Committee. And when I became president of the Common Council, I restored him to that position as chairman of the Finance and Personnel Committee. Next up on the bottom row, second from left, is Alderman Jose Perez. Alderman Perez is a former staffer in the Department of City Development. He's a former developer himself, and I appointed him to lead the City of Milwaukee's Zoning and Neighborhood Development Committee. Next up, second to last there is Alderwoman Marina Dimitrievich. Marina served as the county board chairwoman for Milwaukee County, a longtime Milwaukee County supervisor before coming to the Milwaukee Common Council. She had, as I said, she had served as chair, and so she had a ton of experience. And so she's one of the very few members who came in to office on the city council as a chairperson. She leads Milwaukee Common Council's Public Safety and Health Committee. And that's an interesting thing because in the last term, Alderwoman Coggs and I, we worked together to change the name of the Public Safety Committee from just Public Safety to Public Safety and Health, because we don't want for health to be on the back burner in those conversations. We wanted it to be on the forefront of people's minds. And with the year that we just went through with COVID, right, it showed that why it was important to make sure that health was at the forefront of people's minds as well. And Milwaukee County spends boatloads of more money on health and human services than the city of Milwaukee. So she's got that experience both as a principal leader, as county board chairperson, and somebody who had oversight of large public health expenditures. And so she's chair of the Public Safety and Health Committee. And so that group and myself, I think we've been able to accomplish a lot over the time that I've been president of Milwaukee Common Council. Here I am, along with Tim Sheehy from the Metropolitan Milwaukee Association of Commerce, and Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, for the first in-person Madison night in Milwaukee, held at the St. Kate Hotel downtown here just a number of weeks ago. A great event, great to have legislators from Madison in Milwaukee so we can work to address, build relationships in order to address some of the more pertinent, important needs here in Milwaukee. That was just one of the things I worked with these two in order to get Milwaukee Tool that deal done. And it was an incredible opportunity to work alongside them in order to get that done, in addition to working with my colleagues. Other things that we've been able to accomplish since I've been president of the Common Council, we worked to make sure that what had become a controversial police cops hiring grant was passed. And so basically what that does was slow down the level of attrition that we face in our police department. With a lot of officers leaving because of the current times, it was important that we slowed that down while also working to make sure that we had people who live in our community, who know our community, taking the pledge and the responsibility to serve our community as police officers. Some of the other things that we did was this, that just happened not terribly long ago. 10 years in the making, the Couture, we broke ground on that development. It's going to be a signature development for Milwaukee. It's going to create thousands, literally thousands of good paying union construction jobs for people in the city of Milwaukee. I was told over 1 million construction hours, and at least 400,000 of those construction hours will go to individuals in the city of Milwaukee who are unemployed or underemployed. That's going to have a tremendous impact. There will be hundreds of jobs that will be in-use jobs after the Couture is developed. We just broke ground recently as well on the east-west bus rapid transit. So they'll have a station there along with the streetcar, bicycle use, and other things at that site. As I said, it's going to be a signature development for Milwaukee, transformative not just for our skyline, but also for our city. And so I'm proud of some of the things that we've been able to do, but there's still much more to do. So where do we want Milwaukee to go in the next 3 years, the next 5 years? Like, what's the vision? What's the goal? And that may change depending on who you ask. But if you ask me, I think this is where we should be going. And so my mission, is this. I would like to see in the next, 5 years especially, that Milwaukee becomes a city where we address issues at their root, creating an environment teeming with safety for our families, opportunities for our citizens, growth for our businesses, and justice for our people. And I think we can accomplish those by using this vision. And that's to create a stronger, safer, and more stable Milwaukee through pragmatic, inclusive, and forward-thinking leadership. And how do you do that? Well, there are 4 ideas that I would like to focus on in the next 5 years, right? One of those things is to improve the relationship with Madison. So much of what we do in the city of Milwaukee is tied up with what happens in the state capitol, right? We can't move things forward in Milwaukee without the partnership from some of our legislative leaders in Madison. And so what that means is that we need to rebuild trust. We need to rebuild relationships. And it's important that we recognize the political environment in Madison as it is, and not as we would necessarily like it to be. So doing those things, I think we can rebuild trust and move the relationship forward with Madison. So for instance, there's a lot of talk about having a sales tax in Milwaukee that would put us in line with virtually every other major metropolitan area in the United States. We can't do that unilaterally at the city. We need permission from the state government in order to make that happen. And so that's why we need their help. Doing so would provide us an opportunity to make an investment in property tax relief. And if we make an investment in property tax relief, my belief and the idea is that that'll also encourage greater business growth here in the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County. We got to reimagine public safety in Milwaukee. For too often, people think of public safety in terms of just police, like how many bodies can you throw at a situation? And police, of course, play a very vital and important role. We've got to look at POs, not just in terms of police officers. We have to look at POs in terms of prevention and other opportunities. So for instance, this summer, we've got all these funds from the federal government, $394 million. My thought is that since we have these funds that are available, there's no reason why that every single person, every single kid, every single child in Milwaukee should have the opportunity to partake in a program that keeps them active, that keeps them engaged, that keeps them safe. So whether it's True School, whether it's Urban Underground, whether it's MPS Rec, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club, you name it, doesn't matter. They should be able to go and participate in any program, and they should be able to do it free of charge for this summer and the next several summers because we have the opportunity to pay for it. That doesn't mean, though, that just because we make those investments that we would be turning a blind eye towards the need to have police officers where it's important. We can do those things. We can make investments in programs like that and can keep kids engaged while also accepting, like I said, the cops hiring grant to make sure that we slow down the attrition that's happening due to retirements here. Reimagining public safety also means that we have to work on our Fire and Police Commission, the oversight body for police and fire in Milwaukee. For 10 years, more than that, there has been the ability of the city of Milwaukee to go to 9 members. That's full statutory strength for the police department. For the Fire and Police Commission. Yet we have not accomplished that. And so what I would like to see is for us to get there. And I know that, and I'm sure all of you do as well, the mayor put forward a slate of candidates to go into the Fire and Police Commission, 3 who I think are very good candidates, and they'll be vetted very shortly at an upcoming Public Safety and Health Committee meeting. But that doesn't get us to 9, though, and so we need to continue to work to do that, and we need to work to make sure that the people that we put on also reflect the diversity of experiences of people who live in the city of Milwaukee. We need a renewed focus on jobs. A renewed focus on jobs. Why? Because since before I was born, Milwaukee has struggled mightily with trying to reinvent itself, with trying to provide opportunities for our citizens after the collapse of heavy manufacturing here in Milwaukee. A lot of those jobs went to right-to-work states in the South. They went, down to Mexico. They went overseas. Some of them relocated to suburban communities, right? Out of the core of the city where people who needed access to sometimes low-skill manufacturing work lived. And so we need to find new ways in order to get people from their homes and to jobs. That includes not only a regional system of transportation, a true regional system of transportation in Milwaukee, but it also includes opportunities for us to work collaboratively with our partners of the state, with the Department of City Development, in order to put forward new ideas. Right now, folks have been working from home, for the past year. There's an opportunity, I think, for us to really capitalize on that. How do we work with DCD? How do we work with the state in order to encourage folks who are working from home elsewhere to relocate to Milwaukee? So let's just say you're somebody who's working for a firm in New York City, right? And you're making those big New York City Manhattan dollars. Well, I would love to have you here because while you're making those big bucks, you probably don't want to pay the New York City rent. So come here where the cost of living is much less than what it is in New York City, and take those dollars that you earn in New York and spend them here. Spend them downtown. Spend them on our commercial corridors here in the city of Milwaukee. We should be working to make Milwaukee America's choice for small business headquarters. We should be working to make sure that we continue to have a pipeline for individuals who are unemployed or underemployed to work in the city service, whether that's the Department of Neighborhood Services, whether it's the Department of Public Works, whether it's MMSD, installing green infrastructure projects around Milwaukee. Like, we have a great opportunity, I think, right now to really rethink and redo how we create jobs in Milwaukee. So whether it's manufacturing, whether it's tech, whether it's nursing, whatever, we need to find an opportunity to get people from where they are to work. The next thing is transforming education. Far too many people in Milwaukee have a negative view of education. It's so splintered in this community. We need to find a way to make sure that we're taking care of every single child. Former Mayor John Norquist once said that, you cannot build a city on pity. And I agree, you can't. But I believe you got to build a city on two things, a strong foundation woven together by both education and economics or employment. Because people make major decisions about whether or not they're going to move to Milwaukee, move away from Milwaukee, start a business in Milwaukee, the whole gamut based on the education system. So we really need to make sure that we take a stronger look at that. If we can and we need to provide a pathway for Milwaukee students as they're graduating from high school. So it doesn't matter if they're going to college, right? I mean, I went to college, that's what was pushed on me and a lot of my peers, but that's not the way for everybody. Like I said, I got brothers that got into trouble. They were not going to college, but they still need to provide for themselves. They still need to provide for their families. So let's make sure that there's a pathway for them if they're not going to college. Are they going to go to trades and apprenticeships? Are they going to go into the military? Are they going to go into technology, culinary arts, cosmetology, you name it? We have to provide opportunities and a pathway forward for our young people here in Milwaukee. And of course, there are organizations like Milwaukee Succeeds that are out there trying to bridge those gaps. And one of the initiatives that I started in the last term was creating an office on early childhood initiatives so we can work to connect the dots, so we can work to make sure that public places around Milwaukee become learning centers so that every interaction that young people have is an opportunity for them to learn, for them to grow, so that by the time they get to K4 in Milwaukee Public Schools or get to K5 in Milwaukee Public Schools, they have the foundation necessary in order to carry them forward. Because if you're a good student starting off when you're young, the chances are you're going to continue that path on through elementary school, middle school, and high school as well. And so if we do these things, I believe that we'll be able to not only build a strong Milwaukee, but we'll be able to guide the city from where we are right now to the midpoint of the 21st century. And that's exactly the mindset that we need to have. That's exactly where we need to be thinking about going. 2050 is not terribly far away. It just isn't. And we need new ideas and new approaches in order to get us there. So thank you all very much. Okay, like I said, this is only my second time here. So I think, and Mr. President, perhaps you can enlighten me if I'm wrong. This is now the time for questions. Am I correct? All right, and so I'm happy to have any, except from Frank. I keep picking on Frank. Yes, sir, behind Frank, very close. I mean, I'm sorry? Oh, repeat the question. Oh, sure. So the question was, when I say we need to provide pathways for young people, what does that mean? It means that when instead of having young people that graduate from Milwaukee Public Schools, right, which is the largest school system in the state, right? Instead of having young people simply graduate and get a diploma and having them to be left to figure things out on their own, they should have a pathway that they have been working on so that they know where they're going after they get their diploma. So again, whether that's working in a trade that perhaps they would have been working on from freshman year to the time they graduate, whether that's going into cosmetology and working with perhaps MATC, or whether that is going into military service and participating in the ROTC program like I did when I was in high school. It means making sure that young people know where they're going and not just being left to figure it out after they get their diploma. It happens too often, I think, in this community that we try to make interventions in people's lives too late. I mean, that's, I told you a story about my mentorship experience in the YMCA. And even to this day, I wear this green wristband. Tom will appreciate this. It's got the 4 core values of the YMCA: caring, honesty, respect, responsibility. Those were instilled in me my freshman year in high school when I participated in the Sponsor a Scholar program. And I had a path. I knew that I was going to college right after 8th grade when I got involved with the program. I already knew that. So let's set young people up on a path so they know where they're going. That's what I mean by that. Instead of just get a diploma and now go figure it out on your own. Yes, sir. Yeah, I would go one, well, let me repeat the question. The question was how to better the relationship between Milwaukee and Madison. I would go one step further and say that Milwaukee is not one of the most economic centers in Wisconsin. It is the most important economic center in Wisconsin. And I think, the folks that run the legislature especially, they know that. They see that, they recognize that. And I think the way that you build the relationships there is by trying. I think that that in some cases that there is not a sincere attempt to try to build a relationship. And so I think that's something that we desperately need to work on in the next number of years. I have tried, especially in my position now as council president, to liaison, to do outreach to members of the Republican Party, the folks that control the legislature, to tell them about the value of Milwaukee, to tell them the situation that we're in, and the fact that we need their help in order to solve some of the problems. For instance, just recently, Representative Sanfilippo of New Berlin said that Milwaukee is a war zone and the governor ought to deploy the National Guard to control Milwaukee. I disagree. My colleagues also disagreed. Some colleagues sent a letter to Representative Sanfilippo that he probably didn't take too kindly to. I sent another letter, my own. And I laid out to the representative in my letter, I said, look, Mr. Representative, if you believe that policing is the issue, we don't have the ability to raise our own revenues. We're stuck with the property tax. Would you advocate to your colleagues to help us to have more shared revenue, which, by the way, since 2003, in real dollars, we're receiving $111 million less than what we were in 2003, whereas police costs have gone up $115 million since 2003. I said, Mr. Representative, if you think jobs are the issue, can you help us to pass this sales tax? Because when we do that, as I said, we'll put a lot of money into reducing property taxes, which will encourage business growth here. And on the same subject of jobs, this should have happened a long time ago, but there are scores of people who live in the city of Milwaukee who need access to family supporting jobs, so they're not working 2 and 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. So could you help us out with a regional transit authority that would help on 2 ends? One, it would help those people, and would also help those business leaders, because day in and day out, we constantly get complaints from business owners, business leaders, these jobs that we need in the suburbs that say, hey, we don't have a deep enough talent pool in order to fill these jobs. Here we are, people who need jobs, family supporting ones, and family supporting jobs in the suburbs, and the only thing standing in between them is the legislature. So I'm like, Mr. Representative, you can help us to solve some of these things. And the response that I got was a link, and it linked back to the letter that my colleagues had sent, the one that he probably didn't. So there was no, let's work together, stuff like that. That's what we're dealing with. But I'm not going to stop. Joe Sanfilippo, and I'm talking to you in the camera. You and I, Representative Sanfilippo and I serve on the Wisconsin Center District Board together. So at some point, we're going to see each other in person, and I'm going to bring this up to him. I'm not going to stop. We're not going to stop. And I think that's what needs to happen. You basically need a cot in the Capitol, not to be a thorn in the side, but to push and cajole, to prod in order to get what we need in order to push this city forward. And what is good for the city is also good for the state. Yes.
Would you say police community relationships in Milwaukee are better or worse or the same over the past year? And assuming they're not what you would like them to be, how council do you make?
Yeah. Well, the Fire and Police Commission is the entity that oversees the police. So there's not very much that the Common Council can do other than try and urge and push the Fire and Police Commission in a particular direction, which we've done since the killing of George Floyd last year. We've listened to folks out in the community, and we have put forward legislation asking the Fire and Police Commission to do a number of things, which a number of things they have passed and turned into standard operating procedures for police. For instance, I championed this 8 can't wait policy. It's a national platform of things that if you enact them, the statistics show that it's less likely that somebody's going to be killed if they interact with police. So we've done that. We passed legislation which the FPC took up to say that if somebody is saying that they cannot breathe, that you make sure that you stop and you check on them, you provide them medical services. We passed legislation that the FPC adopted as well that says that whenever police officers even point their gun, not even discharge it, but point their gun, that they have to report that. We passed, and the FPC agreed as well, that there ought to be greater regular communication between police and members of the community, most notably the community activists, the folks who are out there on the front lines. And a lot of that was done, I think, in credit to Jeff Norman, who is the current acting chief of police and somebody who I've been outspoken, with the situation withstanding as it is. I think ought to be chief. So those are some of the things. Of course, there's work yet to be done. You're not going to solve all the issues around police and community within a year's time. But we have made some progress. I think it's important to recognize that and to know that we continue to be committed to making even greater progress in the future. Yes, sir.
Mr. President, thank you for listing out one of the questions I have for you is, what do you think your greatest
Yeah. If folks didn't hear, the question is, what is our greatest challenge? And I think your question is broadly speaking about Milwaukee. I think that our greatest challenge in Milwaukee is really those last two things that I touched on, is building a foundation in employment and education. If we are able to do that, I just firmly believe that if we are able to get folks access to family supporting jobs and quality education, then a lot of the stuff that we see at night on the news, not all of it, not that it would be a panacea, but a lot of the stuff that we see goes away. And we don't have to look terribly far into the past in order to see it, right? Milwaukee has a lot of dubious accolades as of late in the past number of years. We have consistently been, not just one of the most segregated areas in the country, but we also have been one of, if not the worst place in America to raise a Black child. We've got one of the largest discrepancies in homeownership between Black residents and white residents. The achievement gap in education between Black students and white students couldn't be farther apart. I think Mississippi probably even, or West Virginia probably even beat us there. But if we could fix those things, then I think that this city would be able to turn around, especially as it relates to the least among us. in some of the most hard-hit, depressed neighborhoods that the city has, the neighborhoods that I grew up in. And like I said, you don't have to look too far away in our past in order to figure that out, because just a few short decades ago, Milwaukee was once upon a time the #1 place in the country for African Americans to live, when folks had access to good paying jobs that helped them to support their families. Black homeownership was up. The quality of life was up. The trash, I wasn't around, but you all drive around here, right? You see people throwing litter, out their windows and stuff like that. I remember stories, folks would tell me even now, decades ago when they first came here, Milwaukee was the cleanest city that you had. But when you don't have those sort of opportunities available to folks, it eats at pride. It eats at pride. And when you eat at pride and when you eat at dignity, this is what the result is going to be. I remember when I was a teenager and I was walking up North Avenue. And North Avenue tells a story, right? Because it goes from the lake all the way out into Brookfield. And so you get these valleys of prosperity and depression. And then when you get to the west side of the city, back into the Wauwatosa and then suburbs, the other suburbs outside of the county, you get back to prosperity again, right? But when I was walking down my part of North Avenue in the city of Milwaukee on the north side, as a young black man, I figured out a long time ago that this is dangerous. It is absolutely dangerous when young people walk up and down these streets and they see windows busted out, they see businesses shuttered. When you walk into a place of employment, usually the business owner doesn't look like you. You don't have those role models to look up to. That seeps into your psyche, and you begin to think that that's normal, and it's not. And that is what begets what we have right now. There's a lot of conversation right now around Water Street, right? And some of the violence that's happened down there as of late. And not just Water Street, you can look into a number of neighborhoods across Milwaukee and see, incidents of violence as well. But let it be known that I believe, and I think that, a lot of folks believe as well, is that it's poverty that breeds violence, not the other way around. So that's a long way to say, fix education, fix employment with good paying family supporting jobs, like we did with Milwaukee Tool, for instance. When they were coming in, and this is going to be a great addition to downtown, and I'm very happy that they're coming here. And they're bringing jobs that, are going to be making $75,000 to $80,000 a year, but the lowest paid jobs, behind the scenes, I was pushing them to raise the wage. The folks have been asking for it for years. This state hasn't seen a minimum wage increase in God knows how long. And nowhere in the country can you pay your rent, provide for your family, put food on the table with $7.50. You just can't. And so I pushed them to raise the wage to $15 an hour, and I'm glad that they did it. They did come through and they did do that. We need more of that. And you need to bring the jobs here where people are. If the state is not going to be our partner to expand regional transit, you got to bring the jobs here. That's the only way that you're able to get away from some of the stuff again that we see at night. Yes, sir.
I'm in a prayer chain of some black churches in Milwaukee, and they have some reports that black children of police officers were asked that their parents should put police officers. Are you aware of that report?
No, I'm not aware of that report. I'm sorry. Yes, I'll repeat the question. The question is that basically that there are children of African American police officers who have been harassed, and the goal is to try to get their parents to quit the force, essentially. And asked if I was aware of the report around that. I am not. This is the first time that I'm hearing of it. But my immediate reaction is no. I mean, they certainly should not. Look, if this city is majority minority, it's 65% person of color. And whether you like it or you don't, the police and community relations are what they are and have been, what they've been for the past number of years. And so I think the best way to address some of the situations that we see in our communities is to have more police officers who look like the people in the neighborhoods that they patrol. And I think it's just incredibly dangerous for us to have what the state has given us, which is an opportunity for folks who live, 4 hours away, way up north, and the only thing that you've ever heard about Milwaukee is that, it's a crime-ridden, dangerous place. Now you got the opportunity to have those preconceived notions, to come down here, never move into the city, never develop any relationships with folks who live here in the city, live outside of it, and then police those same neighborhoods that you've been conditioned to be afraid of. That's not right. That is sort of the epitome of what they call an occupying force. And so I would like those people to stay on board, to stay in the department, because that's the sort of face that we need in order to quell the situations that we have in some of Milwaukee's most depressed neighborhoods. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Question is, so some of the young people, especially young people of color, who are committing acts of violence out there, are being directed by senior members of gangs out there. That's more of a law enforcement question, and that's very, quite honestly, difficult for me to answer. So how do you go about busting those folks? That part I can probably touch on in that, we need folks in this community that speak up when something's going awry in their neighborhoods. When they see something that's not right, they need to speak up. They need to reach out. They need to call it in. Too often it doesn't happen, right? I've got incidents where constituents will contact me and say, "Hey, somebody's been shooting off a gun, every night for the past forever." Well, I don't know, because you haven't talked to me, you haven't called me, you haven't emailed me, and if you haven't emailed me, you likely haven't done it to the police. And then we relay that information over to police. They patrol in that area and they get the issues resolved. And so I guess in part that's a way to address the situation, is that we need people to always speak up when something is going wrong or awry. If you see something out there that's not right, including what you're talking about, if you have folks out there that you see are doing wrong, then you got to report it. Another anecdotal piece on that is, a couple of weeks ago, I had an incident in the district that I represent where 350 rounds were shot off from some 30 guns, not terribly far from where I live. I put my kids to sleep. It was a nice night. We had the windows up. And that was the most sustained gunshots that I'd ever heard in my life. And I would imagine that those people who were pulling those triggers on those guns, they went home, they went to somebody's house, could be their own house, could be a parent's house, whoever's house, and nobody said a thing. You can't have that. You can't have that, because they're doing that in that neighborhood today, and thankfully nobody got seriously hurt or killed, but that could happen where somebody accidentally shoots into a house and hits a kid, or kills somebody. You can't have that. We need people to raise their voices when incidents like that are happening in their neighborhoods. Yes, sir.
What role will the HOP play 5 years from now?
What role will the HOP play 5 years from now? Well, I'll tell you this, that for me, as I said, I've had the opportunity to live in New York for a little bit, and had the opportunity to stay for a summer in London. And my dad's from Chicago. My brother-in-law lives there now. So when people travel, and you travel widely, you see the importance of public transportation, right? And so if we are able to continue to make investments in that and not have it to be a downtown only circulator system, then I think in 5 years, it could have tremendous utility, especially if it goes into the neighborhoods as is projected. So if we're able to accomplish those things, and I know that the administration is constantly working to apply for federal grants in order to expand it farther from its current footprint, then I think it could be a integral part of. I want to see as many modes of safe alternative transit as possible. That includes the hop. That includes bus rapid transit. That includes a regional system of transit. That includes biking with protected bike lanes and not just paint, and so many other things. That includes the scooters that we have as well. So there are a number of things in our transportation network that over the next 5 years, I think, is going to help to make Milwaukee attractive, especially to the next generation, not of leaders, but the next generation of residents. All right, these young, highly mobile, educated folks who, believe it or not, choose their city before they choose a job. Right, so we need to make sure that if we want our city to grow and be competitive, that we are actually on a competitive plane with our peer cities as well, and that includes investments in public transportation. Yes, sir.
Somebody that has the ability to go outside of the hearing, that sales tax. And I'm not sure if we want to bring it from 5.6 to 9, 5.6 to 12. If some other cities that have those sales taxes, or include those that have the ability to travel outside of that range to buy their larger purchases, TV or whatever it might be, a new bicycle, $1,000 bike. Or include me if I were living here, running a 5.6 or 5%. Or include even going 20 months, being like that automobile, going to buy that item there. For those that are stuck because they don't have means of transportation, now you are punishing that. How do you address that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that for the large part, if somebody has made the trek into the city for a game at Pfizer Forum, let's just say, right? And you go out to dinner, right? Like folks are going to make purchases here. Folks can do that now. I mean, they can go out and make purchases elsewhere now just because they want to, right? But if individuals are coming into the city, the likelihood is they're going to spend some money into the city. I'm not saying that we're going to capture every single dollar. I think that's probably a far cry, and I'm sure it doesn't happen in other communities that have even higher sales taxes than what we'd be looking to do here. So it's not about capturing every single cent that every person would be spending here. It's just about increasing the amount that we currently get. So then it turns around to reduce. Property taxes. It could be that because we've reduced property taxes, that some of the costs on things that folks are looking to purchase could come down as well. So the other individuals that you mentioned, yeah, I mean they'll be paying into it too. But this provides us an opportunity to capture some dollars that just currently that we currently don't capture at all. So it's not about capturing every single cent. We can't. But if we can capture more than what we do, which is zero of folks who live in outside areas, then that's a victory. Especially because we can turn around and invest it again into property tax reduction. We can put that money into public safety, so on. I mean, so on and so forth. I mean, folks drive. If you look at the freeway right now, right in the morning, you'll see people coming in from the suburbs, from the west or the north, coming to downtown Milwaukee to work. Those freeways that we all pay for, they end at some point, and then they end up driving on city streets. And they're not putting into the maintenance of those city streets. If, by God, hopefully, there's not an incident where they have a medical emergency and need to call on the fire department in order to help them, that cost is borne by City of Milwaukee taxpayers. And by the way, in the City of Milwaukee, we have the highest concentration of people who live in poverty, who can't escape that. If there was an incident of violence or they needed police protection, well, that too is only on the city of Milwaukee taxpayer, So, no, we can't force people to make all their purchases here. They will make some purchases here. They will spend some dollars here. And if we're able to capture something to give some relief to city taxpayers who are bearing the brunt, not just for them, but for everybody, commuters and visitors alike, then that's a victory. Thank you all.
Some of you may or may not know that President Johnson has a connection to our very own Harry Frankie. So John would like to share a quick limerick in the tradition that has been established by Mr. Frankie. A couple of weeks ago when Lafayette Crump spoke, I got inspired to resurrect the Harry Frankie Limerick tradition. And after the meeting, somebody said, you really should explain to people what that Limerick thing is all about. And I thought, really? Am I that old, or are you all that young that you don't remember the Harry Frankie limericks? And limericks are a part of Rotary tradition. Bill Randall wrote some wonderful limericks. Maybe we need a separate meeting. It would take time to talk about the Harry Frankie limerick. He didn't just end Rotary meetings with a limerick. It was community meetings. He would send limericks to people on their birthdays. But I've been inspired again because I first met Cavalier in 2005 when he was one of the Milwaukee High School senior applicants for a fund my dad set up to provide a little bit of money to help someone go to college. And the only stipulation to get this contribution to your college funding was that you had to go to a Wisconsin school. Harry wanted talented Milwaukee public school graduates to stay here and not go somewhere else. And we gave the funds to Chevy that year. And I would have given it to anybody named Chevy. I love the name. And more recently, I had occasion to put my son, Harry's grandson, in touch with President Johnson, and he was able to provide and help provide some more mentoring for Joseph Frankie. So it just goes to show you, what happens when you pay it forward. So here's the limerick. To Harry, his scholars were most dear. One was Chevy, aka Cavalier. He'd be proud of what you've done, but would say you've just begun. If he were here, he would stand up and cheer. Thank you. Thank you, John. That's great. Cavalier, President Johnson, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us. In honor of community leaders like yourself who speak to our club members, we will be making a donation to the YWCA of Southeast Wisconsin, whose mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Thank you again for being here. A real quick note, I was wrong. There are not brochures on your table for the to give you the information about Donite. Those will be at the table on your way out, so please take one of those and read about her story. It's a fantastic write-up that Mary put together for her and her current situation. Next week, we will be ending, if not the most forgettable or boring presidency in the history of the club, when I have the esteemed honor of passing the gavel to Todd Bentley. So join us next week for the Rotary Changing of the Guard. Appreciate everyone taking the time to be with us today. This meeting is adjourned.